Some footage was never meant to be seen. Some voices were never meant to speak. In the cold glow of a luxury hotel hallway camera, time stopped at 3:21 a.m. A woman, disoriented, shaken, stumbled forward. Behind her, a man moved like a shadow, silent, calculated, and that woman was Cassie. The man? Allegedly, Sean Diddy Combs. The world saw glitz, platinum, power. But the hotel staff who worked the graveyard shift, they saw something else entirely. Bruises, shaking hands, a woman who didn't speak because she wasn't allowed to. And now, almost a decade later, that hallway footage, the very same one allegedly buried under cash and NDAs, has been leaked. Sources claim Diddy offered $100,000 to destroy the tape the night it was recorded. But the footage didn't vanish. It was copied, saved, hidden. And now it's evidence. Court transcripts are being unsealed. Former staff are talking. And Cassie? She's silent. But her silence has become screamingly loud. This isn't a music story. It's not about ego or fame. This is about manipulation, fear, and what happens when the lights go out in rooms that don't have cameras, because the cameras were removed. The world thought it knew Diddy. It didn't. What's coming next will change everything. The Mogul and the Mask. How the man known as Diddy built a kingdom that thrived in silence. For more than 3 decades, Sean Diddy Combs sat at the summit of hip-hop royalty. He was untouchable, an icon who moved between boardrooms and dance floors with the same effortless power. Mogul, producer, billion-dollar brand. He turned Bad Boy Records into a cultural empire, sold Ciroc like it was liquid gold, and reinvented himself with every decade. The world applauded, and most never questioned the machine behind the man. But behind every camera flash was something carefully concealed. Cassie Ventura entered that machine in 2005. A 19-year-old singer with a magnetic face and a delicate voice, Cassie was marketed as a rising star. Diddy discovered her, then signed her. Then something shifted. Her music slowed. Her appearances became selective. Her interviews filtered. She was around always, but never really there. To the public, she was Diddy's protege, his girlfriend, later his ex. But to those closest to the inner circle, assistants, hotel staff, security teams, Cassie became something else entirely, the centerpiece of a carefully maintained illusion. According to the leaked Oken testimony, a sworn document by former hotel manager Sylvia Oken, Cassie didn't check herself into luxury hotels. She was checked in. Her name rarely appeared on records. Instead, aliases like Valerie East, C. Vance, and Lady V were used. Sylvia noticed the patterns. Arrival at odd hours, always with security. No conversation, never alone, and always placed in room 1406. She walked like she'd been trained to move silently, Sylvia wrote. She didn't ask questions. She didn't make eye contact. But she always looked like she was waiting for someone to call her name. The hotel wasn't a sanctuary. It was a stage. And room 1406? It wasn't just a suite. It was what insiders began calling the prep room. At first, no one asked questions. High-profile guests demanded discretion. Diddy was known for eccentric demands, blackout curtains, imported incense, full-room white decor. But when hotel staff started seeing bruises, ruined dresses stuffed into trash bins, and towels marked with what looked like blood, questions began to surface. One former concierge, whose name is redacted in the unsealed case documents, recalls a moment in 2014. She came down barefoot. Her heels were in her hand. She had a cut on her lip. When I asked if she needed help, the man next to her, Diddy's security, told me to mind the checkbook, not the chick. I never forgot that line. These weren't isolated moments. These were recurring patterns. But behind the facade of lavish parties and flawless photos, silence was currency. The few staff who spoke out were allegedly fired, reassigned, or legally gagged through aggressive non-disclosure clauses, many citing reputational damage risk. Even Cassie's career began to tell its own story. After her debut single, Me and You blew up, the momentum stalled. Her second album never released. Projects she was attached to evaporated. Rumors of her being too picky or unfocused were floated by media outlets, but those close to her suspected something else. In one now-deleted tweet from a former studio engineer who worked on early Cassie demos, he wrote, "She was never the problem. The cage around her was." Over time, the glamour blurred into confusion. Why was Cassie, young, beautiful, talented, so silent in a world where women were finally beginning to reclaim their narratives? Why did she seem like a ghost in every space Diddy occupied? Then came the elevators. According to building security logs from Hotel Concord in NYC, obtained by an anonymous whistleblower in 2025, Cassie was seen entering a private elevator linked to the presidential suite 17 times between 2016 and 2018. Not once did she check in herself. Not once was she recorded exiting without an escort. And not once was there camera footage from inside that elevator. It had been intentionally disabled. Diddy's life, publicly, was spiraling upward. Fashion deals, producing credits, performances at award shows, and even fatherhood. But privately, multiple former employees, under the protection of legal anonymity, describe an entirely different lifestyle, a world micromanaged to the second, where every interaction was documented, every face carefully screened, and every woman in his orbit referred to by code names. In a series of emails leaked to a private Discord group called Dark Vault, a former security team member identified only as C said this. He created zones. Physical and mental. You didn't enter her zone unless it was cleared. You didn't speak unless spoken to. And if someone crossed lines, they were paid to forget or made to disappear. The language of luxury covered something colder. Terms like session preparation, emotional recalibration, and post-departure silence period were allegedly used in scheduling emails for Cassie's visits to residences and private events. In public, she smiled. In private, she was vanishing. Journalist Eliza King, whose investigative work on abusive power dynamics in the music industry sparked the #LabelSilence movement, told her podcast listeners, Cassie wasn't hidden in a basement. She was hidden in broad daylight. That's the new trap. Luxury is prison. When everything around you is gold, no one asks what it costs to stay. And for a while it worked. Cassie's voice grew quieter. Diddy's image stayed bulletproof. His name remained on guest lists, charity galas, and Forbes rankings. Until someone decided to save the tape. A hotel IT contractor, hired to wipe footage after an incident, instead made a backup. What he saw: a hallway, a figure, a fall, and a woman whose body told a story her lips never could. It would be years before that tape leaked. But by then, the house of cards had already started trembling. Silent no more, those who had once obeyed began to whisper. And every whisper traced back to that hallway, that room, that night. The luxury was never real. It was just the mask. And beneath it, there was something no one was ready to face. The footage, the masked rituals. And the night Cassie almost didn't walk out. The leak didn't hit TMZ. It didn't come through a court filing. It came from a file drop buried in a locked subfolder on a private Discord server known only to deep-net sleuths as Dead Key. The folder was titled 1406_confession footage, MOV. The clip was short, less than 30 seconds. But it spread like a virus within minutes. Grainy, undated, time-stamped 3:21 a.m. A hallway. Cassie, barefoot, limp, one arm hanging unnaturally to the side. Diddy, walking behind her, not touching her, but close enough that the threat felt physical. There's no sound, but as she reaches the door, she turns to the camera. For just 1 second, one broken glance, and then the frame cuts. That was all it took. Within hours, ex-staffers, former assistants, anonymous insiders, and broken NDAs began flooding underground Reddit threads and encrypted podcasts. The video was real. And for those who had been too afraid to speak, it became a signal. The veil had been lifted. In a masked interview on Channel 32X, A woman calling herself M, a former wellness coordinator hired for Diddy's private therapy retreats, revealed what she said really happened in the hotel suites and mansions Cassie was ushered into. They weren't wellness retreats. They were ritual rehearsals. Guests were called participants. Women were trained to be hosts. And Cassie was always the one setting the stage. M described scenes that sounded like surreal performance art, except no one watching was allowed to blink. She wore a porcelain mask, always. And there were scripts, typed, folded, handed out with envelopes of cash.
I still remember mine.
It said, "Move, obey, disappear." Others spoke of freak-off, events, legendary among inner circles, whispered about for years, but never confirmed. These weren't just wild parties. They were, according to testimony, scripted experiences, complete with lighting cues, assigned outfits, and blackout rooms. A former dancer, referred to as K, spoke to a podcast under heavy voice distortion. "We were flown in, phones taken, names changed. You'd enter a room lit in red, music looping slow and low like a trance. You'd wear a mask, a number, and he'd watch. Sometimes he'd direct. Sometimes he'd just sit there, silent." The same language kept surfacing. Training, sessions, zones. Multiple sources claimed Cassie was referred to not by her name, but as M0, Master Host Zero. Even more disturbing were allegations of sedative use. One whistleblower, a former caterer, shared this note. "I was told to prepare green tea infused with magnesium. Not for relaxation, for compliance. They said it helps soften resistance." That was their word, soften. In another damning claim, a woman allegedly present at a 2017 private event described a scene where masked women stood still for hours, lit only by flickering candles. Guests moved around them, observing, judging. She said Cassie didn't speak that night. She just knelt. And then there were the underground tunnels. Blueprints of two of Diddy's properties, one in Los Angeles, one in upstate New York, were anonymously released through a leaked Dropbox link titled "Silence is Proof." Both properties had unregistered basements and tunnel systems, according to the documents. One tunnel led to a private back house. Another was described by a former housekeeper as a silent room with a single chair and mirrors on every wall. "She was in there when I brought the towels," the housekeeper said. "Just sitting, still, wearing a white slip. I asked her if she needed anything and she whispered, 'I'm not allowed.'" This line, "I'm not allowed," echoed across multiple testimonies. One former driver for Bad Boy Entertainment recalled Cassie crying in the back seat one night, refusing to look up. "I asked if she wanted to call anyone. She said, 'No phone, no voice, no exit.' That's when I knew I couldn't work for him anymore." But perhaps the most horrifying moment came from what insiders now call the journal. Allegedly Cassie's private writings, the journal was reportedly recovered by a distant friend after her 2019 split from Diddy. Pages were photographed and leaked, handwriting matched by experts. Each line was more broken than the last. "I wasn't allowed to speak, not even to myself." He calls it love, but love doesn't hide keys. "Sometimes I'd pretend I was just filming a music video. That's the only way I could survive it." In one entry marked only with a date, February 14th, 2018, she writes, "He said he erased it. The hallway video, $100,000 gone. But I saw the guy, the one who backed it up. I hope he's okay. I hope he knows what he did." And that's where it all converges. The $100,000 bribe, the hush money, the erased footage, the tech contractor who, instead of destroying the file, saved it. That man, still unnamed, was later identified only through a code name in court filings, WhistleX. He never showed his face, but his copy of the footage is what now sits in a sealed folder at the heart of the civil case against Diddy. And what it shows is more than violence. It shows a system. Rooms turned into stages. Women turned into props. Fear turned into currency. Courtroom transcripts leaked by legal blog Trial Unlocked contain one direct quote from an early deposition. If she was a girlfriend, why did she need permission to leave? That question shattered the illusion for millions. And it revealed the unbearable truth. Cassie wasn't in a relationship. She was in a performance, one written by a man with too much power and no one to say stop. And when she finally walked away in 2019, she didn't take her voice. She took her silence and let it speak louder than anything she'd ever sung. But silence can only last so long, especially when the tapes don't lie. The collapse, Diddy's empire unravels, one disappearing post at a time. The downfall didn't come like an explosion. It came like a slow leak, a silence louder than applause. And it started with a comment, just one, on a now-deleted Instagram post. A fan asked, "Where's Cassie?" No reply, no likes. But the next morning, Diddy turned off comments across every account. That was the first crack. Then came the silent unfollows. 3 longtime collaborators quietly removed him from their social feeds. His former stylist of 11 years wiped every photo. A known choreographer simply posted a black square with a caption, "We saw too much. We said too little." His legal team insisted it was coincidence. His publicist denied any internal panic. But something had changed. Then came the assistants. 2 longtime employees, women who had stood behind him at events, walked Cassie through crowds, held her bags, whispered to her in hotel lobbies, were suddenly gone. No announcements, just silence. And in place of clarity, a PDF. On April 2nd, a document titled Initial Filing, Ventura vs. Combs, was leaked by a paralegal intern who claimed they couldn't stomach sitting on it any longer. Inside, a timeline of psychological control, evidence of financial coercion, allegations of surveillance, a description of the $100,000 bribe made to erase the hotel hallway footage. But one line shook everything. "We have reason to believe Mr. Combs maintained a rotational system of silence, involving sedatives, financial manipulation, and performance rehearsals passed off as consensual events." That wasn't just legal language. That was a systemic accusation. Suddenly, sponsors paused. Brand collaborations with Ciroc and Revolt halted new promotions. Spotify playlists quietly removed Diddy Essentials. Even longtime allies went dark. One late-night talk show host, known for praising Diddy's career, opened his monologue with, "Turns out the man with the mic wasn't just making noise. He was muting other people's screams." In the courtroom, it was worse. Cassie never appeared in person, but her words did. Through recorded testimony, voice disguised but unmistakably hers, she detailed what she called the program. There were rules, schedules, emotional dress rehearsals. "I wasn't supposed to think. I was supposed to perform." The judge asked if she had ever tried to leave. She paused. "Every time I did, someone got hurt. Emotionally, financially, or they just vanished." Then came the sketches. Courtroom artists captured a new figure sitting alone in the gallery, believed to be Sylvia Oken, the hotel manager who saved the original door locks. She clutched a file, unmoving, while Diddy's legal team flipped through pages. One page, marked Exhibit F, included the following message allegedly emailed to Cassie from an untraceable domain. "If you speak, you lose your family. If you run forever." It was signed P. No one knew who P was. Some say it was code. Others believe it was a former team member, someone still loyal. But what mattered now was the pattern. And that pattern had grown into a movement. On Twitter, #TheRoomsAreal trended for 48 hours. A TikTok user recreated the hallway from the leaked footage using 3D animation. Over 12 million views in 3 days. Instagram pages began documenting Cassie's old photos, pointing out body language. The comments changed. "We missed it." She was screaming the whole time. Her eyes knew. Then came the brand fallout. Ciroc released a vague statement about reevaluating partnerships. One fashion house that had worked with Diddy canceled an upcoming capsule collaboration and quietly scrubbed all imagery. Revolt's homepage, once dominated by his face, replaced him with community spotlights. Then came the final blow. Netflix pulled his documentary. No explanation. Just gone. And still, Diddy didn't speak. Not once. No press conference. No apology tour. No interview with Oprah. Only silence. Until a voicemail leaked. A recording, allegedly pulled from a burner phone recovered during a property search. His voice, unmistakable.
Slow.
Raspy.
Worn.
They never saw the build. They only see the break. But if you build something powerful enough, even if you're gone, it doesn't fall. It waits. That message was time-stamped 2 days before he left the country. According to a flight manifest leaked by Insider Track, Diddy boarded a private jet from Teterboro Airport with only 2 passengers and no return listed. Destination unknown. By the end of that week, his team had gone fully dark. Emails bounced. Offices emptied. Court filings labeled unresponsive. But the case continued. Because even if the man ran, the system he built left receipts. In one of the final depositions, a hotel technician, the man known only as Whistle X, testified under heavy protection. His final words in court, now public record, were, "I didn't save the footage to hurt him. I saved it because she looked at the camera. She looked at me, like she was begging someone to remember she was real." That sentence brought the courtroom to silence. A silence so deep, even the judge paused. Today, Cassie remains quiet. Her Instagram still inactive. Her location undisclosed. But her story, once buried under millions of dollars and decades of silence, is finally being heard. Because the masks have cracked. The rooms have names. And the footage? It's been seen. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a blueprint, a warning, a reckoning. And it's not over. This wasn't just about a man. This was about a system, about power, about silence. What we've just uncovered isn't a scandal that fits neatly into headlines or tabloid columns. It's a shadow network, built in daylight, protected by wealth, and fueled by obedience. Cassie's story was never fiction. It was hidden in contracts, elevator logs, unspoken trauma, and bruises that never made it to TMZ. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was survival. And now, the footage speaks for her. Ask yourself, how many others walked through rooms like 1406? How many smiled on red carpets while privately asking, will anyone believe me? You've seen the court records, the leaked footage, the journal. You've heard the voices that were never meant to be heard. So now we ask you, what do you believe? Do you think this was a man protecting his privacy or someone using power to erase pain? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Start a conversation, because conversations lead to pressure, and pressure leads to justice. This is more than a video. This is a call to remember what too many were forced to forget. Bell, like, share, and subscribe, not just for updates, but to keep these stories from vanishing again. Because the next leak, the next tape, the next voice finally breaking silence, it's coming. And when it does, we'll be here.